Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I think I've recovered almost enough to do a Troika battle report, or rather campaign report. Now, it's a funny old game, Troika, not for everybody, but it does have the nice fighting fantasy system which I'm so familiar with and so nostalgic about. But it definitely needs a nice setting to sit it in, because the setting is so ethereal. It's barely a fog, a whisper of a setting. So I set it using the Acid Death Fantasy setting book. Again, not very thick, but some nice player backgrounds and stuff, and some brief notes about the setting itself. But most importantly, this is a very cool map. So this was our world, and I set the first adventure up here, around this sort of area, in a kind of canyon. And they moved around a bit, travelled around. They went to one of the sultanates, and then were transported down to sort of the southwest area, and that's where the campaign sort of ended for practical reasons. So, Gamma World, yes, I Gamma Worlded it because I Gamma World everything. I'm very comfortable in the Gamma World setting. What I decided to do to add even more structure and muscularity to Troika is use Mutant Crawl Classics adventures. My whole premise for the campaign was to get through some of the Mutant Crawl Classic adventures I didn't do last year in my MCC campaign. And what we started with was Seeking the Posthumans. So the characters were mercenaries hired. There's going to be spoilers. Mercenaries hired by Canyon City to do all the jobs that the Canyon City layabouts didn't want to do, because they'd grown too comfortable. They'd forgotten their old ways, and so these mercenaries were working for Canyon City until a disaster happened, and then they really had to. They were going to be granted a massive reward and just set free of their duties, if you like, so they could wander off or stay in the city if they wanted to. And so they set off on this adventure. There's some horrendous fights, and it was great fun. A nice adventure by Brendan LaSalle. I think it was the first Brendan LaSalle adventure I'd run, so it was very, very cool indeed. That took us 2 sessions, because I didn't want to rush any of them like I had last year. So we did shorter sessions, but spread the adventure over 2. And then they travelled south once they'd won their freedom and won the friendship of max 16 characters, who may have reappeared in the campaign had it come to its conclusion, but he didn't, as it turns out. Went on to the Omnivary of Eden. The characters found a they came across somebody who had a vision, and they were heading towards this place, and unfortunately they were attacked by dune ghouls, because I tried to introduce acid death fantasy monsters as much as I can here and there to give the players a flavour of the setting. So this guy was having a vision, and they followed his vision despite the fact he was mortally wounded by these dune ghouls, and they headed to the Omnivary of Eden, way, way to the north of the acid death fantasy world, in my version of it. And this was a pretty cool one. They had some quite grim discoveries in this adventure. It was really good and really strange and funny. Brilliant stuff by Stephen Newton. Really enjoyed this one. And when they had travelled back, we had a player that missed out on one of the weeks, so I had to get them up to speed. And they travelled back, and they wanted to explore one of the sultanates. So I needed a city urgently, and I thought that Everway would work rather well. Now they had travelled to the north here and found an amazing flying vehicle. So they had that, and they wanted to recharge it because it was running low on power. So they took it here. There was somebody they found who was able to do a sort of trickle charge and charge it up for them. And they discovered in the city that there was a threat nearby, and they were approached by one of the leaders of the city to investigate this threat and possibly deal with it. So after the 2 sessions of this, we launched into the Warlords of Atars, and this lasted us 2 sessions as well. Now this was quite cool. Yeah, it was a big old fight. And they made an enemy of ATOZ, who mysteriously disappeared at the end of the adventure as they were careering towards the ground and crashing. So they crashed to the southwest, and they knew that somebody was had become an enemy of theirs. So at that point, my plan had been to going to Blessings of the Vile Brotherhood, because they'd landed in a mountainous area. But a lot of this is a hex crawl. I'm not experienced with hex crawls. As I read through it more, I wasn't sure if it was the right thing I could run, so I didn't in the end. The plan after this, if we'd done it, was to go to the Apocalypse arc, but the greatest plans laid by mice. We didn't do that. We were struggling because, one of our players had sort of got really busy, another player was getting busy, and so it made it a bit difficult. So we talked about getting in more players, which we did do, and to acclimatise them, I ran the first adventure in here, 1 Year in the Savage Afterworld by Tim Snider. I like Tim Snider's stuff. Last Chance for Gas, we ran that, and it turned into a weird combination of what they call Hicksploitation, and also I introduced the Angel Gang from Judge Dredd into this. So yeah, that was kind of fun. Giant sandworm appeared, and so that set them off on a new phase of the campaign. And I thought, as we got 2 new players, maybe I'll need to extend the campaign more than the 2 adventures I was planning to run. So we came to the next one, and it was Mutant Master, the first part of this, where they go to the Sagau Institute, and I sort of made the Institute smaller than it is in the book, but we found all the stuff we needed to find to set up how ATOZ's plan was going to turn really diabolical. And so they went through basically a crazy funhouse tour of a dungeon. They didn't have to accept the tour, but they took the tour. So they were shown around by a small robot, and their lives were put in a lot of jeopardy. So we got through the first part of that. Then we sort of came to the end of the campaign because people got busy, and I wasn't able to continue with the original players for the next session. I thought, wouldn't it be a good idea though, to, instead of missing out on playing, if the new players had a one-shot, just as a bit of fun. It turned out it wasn't a bit of fun. So yeah, if people get busy and we can't really continue, then that's life, isn't it? Life happens. So yes, it ended with for the first part of Mutant Master, and it if Troika sits in the background, because the setting is so thin for Troika, you can just use. I was basically playing Gamma World with Fighting Fantasy rules, and the character creation is so quick and kind of wacky and fun. So if you don't, I don't know, there are some games about which have a philosophy that they're pushing, but Troika, it's just a bit of fun, and you can tie it to anything you want. You can make an elaborate deep setting, or use one, grab one from another setting, whatever, and it's a light fighting fantasy style game that just sits on the top and runs the show. The initiative system, as I mentioned in another video, I altered it. I took out the end of round card eventually because I didn't think it was fair that, players missed out. So on they go. But that was basically it. That's just a little bit of info about what happened with the Troika campaign. Nice little fighting fantasy system. It just needs to sit on top of a strong setting, I think. I like things to have a strong setting, so Gamma World, Mutant Crawl Classics, and Acid Death Fantasy to give it a sort of Dune style flavour. So that's basically the kind of thing I need to do. I need something with a strong setting, not how Troika is. So that was that. Thank you for watching. There'll be more videos shortly, hopefully.